Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Javihari Jaya Radha Madhava Javihari Jai 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 Jai
Reading from Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Preaching to America, Part 2, Laguna Beach, July 25th, 1975. Laguna Beach is about a 2-hour drive south of Los Angeles. The temple, a house near the beach, was crowded with guests and visiting devotees. After Prabhupada had taken his seat upon the newly upholstered Dāsa, some of the temple leaders came forward, one at a time, and bathed his feet. In the course of his lecture, Prabhupada spoke against taking intoxicating drugs. Is there anyone here who can say, I am the controller? Is there anyone who answers? You may think that you are the controller, or you are controlled by drugs. The city of Laguna Beach was notorious as an illicit drug center. Prabhupada had not come to flatter anyone with sentimental spirituality, but to cut through their illusion. Bathing the feet of the spirituality was good, but to be a genuine devotee, one had to strictly follow the regulations. One had to choose whether to be controlled by drugs or by Krishna. Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, first canto, 18th chapter, texts 29 through 31. And we'll just chant the last shloka, and then we'll go back and read the others. Esha Gem Nivrakashesha Karno Meditation Mrishasa Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam was created by the will of the Lord. Being distressed by hunger and thirst was only a show, because the king endured much, even in the womb of his mother. He was never disturbed by the glaring heat of the brahmastra released by Asvatthama. The king's distressed condition was certainly unprecedented. The devotees of Maharaj Rishi are powerful enough to forbear such distress by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. The situation in this case was therefore all planned by the Lord. It's a very nice explanation. In this, there's a question how the age of Kali could proceed. Especially in the kingdom of Maharaj Rishi, which was complete in all respects. But due to the presence of abundance of gold and tendency, which was now becoming prominent to hoard such gold, which previously was not considered very valuable in the sense that there were other things. Just like you cannot eat gold. A starving man, for him, gold is worthless. And he would trade any amount of gold just to get something to eat. We've seen in times of global upheaval that inflation has turned what would ordinarily be considered great wealth, even millions of whatever, take your pick, whether it's marks or this money or that money. In times of great upheaval, it becomes worthless. My friend's family, after World War II, he told me people would have wheelbarrows. You know what a wheelbarrow is? You use in gardening. That they usually put dirt in it. He said they would be filled with money. Filled with money. Just to try to buy some food. Ordinarily, we consider great wealth. So here, gold has taken some prominence. But that's not all. Now you see that coming, not exactly in this situation, but this is the lead up. The Maharaj Rishi has garlanded the unsuspecting sage with the dead snake. And he is not summoned to be affected by this. We understand how these are Rajarshis, not just simply Raja. Raja means king. Rishi means sage. So these are Rajarshis. He is a sage equal to the sage that he just garlanded. But he is a Kshatriya by birth. And so by caste, he is considered lower. So all these things add into the situation. And then when Sringi did position in society is useless. It's all useless. It means nothing. In Kali Yuga, Brahman is known simply by this thread, which can be purchased in the market for nothing, basically. But they have no qualities. They have no qualities of a Brahmin. You see these things very evident now. No one is acting according to their proper situation. Everyone is polluted by the influence of Kali Yuga. So that the Brahmanas are cursing the Kshatriyas are disrespecting the Brahmanas, and so there is no harmony. This is why Kali Yuga is called the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. There can't be any peace unless and until the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the cream of Vedic literature, is established again as the one literature, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the literary incarnation. So this is very important to understand the sequence of events in one sense, especially how Prabhupada describes that someone who is by nature good, if he by chance commits some misdeed, he immediately feels remorse. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. The non-devotee feels no remorse. He thinks that this is fine. There's no consequence. And anyone who says that this is wrong, he is wrong. I'm not wrong. This is the mentality. That I can do no wrong. Ishvaraham aham bhogi siddhaham balavan sukhi. Ishvaraham, I am the controller. Right? This is the situation. This is also described. I am the controller. Ishvaram aham bhogi, I am the enjoyer. So everything is meant for my enjoyment. So as the controller, I can take what I want. This is where we see how corruption. For such a saintly king, corruption is not possible. He could not be bribed. He could not be enticed by... They have this in different types of activities related to diplomacy. They have different methods, just like Haridas Thakur was they attempted to seduce him. This type of intrigue is seen then and is seen now. But it was not possible during the time of Maharaj Parikshit, up until the point of the age of Kali. No one could be so easily influenced, because they were all controlled. Dhira. They had restraint. This is the earmark of a civilized person, is that he has restraint, which is why it seemed so out of character that Maharaj Parikshit became angry. Anger is not something that you associate with a sage in general. Right? They're free from this. They're above anger. Right? Anger is a symbol of the lower modes. Of course, there is righteous anger, Prabhupada describes, that a devotee is never angry or envious, but when necessary, in order to defend another devotee or to defend Dharma, then a devotee can be like a thunderbolt, if necessary. But these are not the ordinary situation. These are the exceptions. So we see that by the progress and influence of Kali, so Parikshit Maharaj has allowed himself by the will of the Lord to be an instrument. Sometimes we think an instrument is only that I'm doing something on behalf of the Lord. But here, he takes this in a different way. We see it from our perspective and from the purport, from the parampara, that he was also an instrument, but perhaps not completely knowingly. But the Lord wanted to take him back home, back to Godhead, so he put him in this position. So he didn't complain. He could have escaped the curse. He was a great devotee of the Lord, but he accepted it. So this is another symbol of a devotee, is that he's not, for himself, he's not concerned. He understands that this, for whatever reason, I am subjected to this situation, but at least let me sit down and hear the glories of the Lord. So sometimes we see that a devotee gets warning. Here Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days warning. So sometimes a devotee might get several months warning. Like, Jayananda Prabhu. He had several months warning that his situation was terminal. That word terminal means the end, right? The terminal train station is the end of the line. So this term is used very interchangeably. Terminal, the end of the line, final. So he prepared himself. He didn't stop his service, but in his mind he knew that I am dying. For months he knew, I am dying. And no one could persuade him to do anything else. That you go to the hospital, you do this, you do that, you do... No. Why? What is the point? Up till the moment where he could not physically stand, he continued to do service. And even when he, in the wheelchair, he continued to inspire others to continue just by his example. So that is the example of the great soul. That they are not dissuaded by any situation in life. And they're not complaining at all, why me? Why is this happening to me? Even though Jayananda was older than us, he was still a young man, technically speaking. But Prabhupada said, old age means impending death. So in Kali Yuga, everyone is old. You only have 100 years life. So a person who's 40, he's already old. People think. They have terms like that. Over the hill. Over the hill means you go up and then you go down. So it becomes, for one who doesn't recognize this, though, he is at a great disadvantage because he doesn't prepare himself for death. A sage lives every day as if he's about to die. That the next moment could bring death. So what is my duty? What is my duty? So therefore we read Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Why? Because this is the essence of human civilization. What is one's duty at the time of death? And to know that death is coming, one should prepare. So those who are fortunate, they have some insight, they have some realization, they don't take it lightly. They don't go about their business just ignoring the reality that at some point I must die. They accept that, yes, death may come, but I am not afraid. Neha bikrama nasosti prativayana vidite. This is the great benefit of spiritual life, that it removes all sense of fear. Removes all sense of fear. He knows that Krishna is protecting me. under any circumstance, whether I have terminal cancer or whether I have, abundant health, still everything is Krishna's mercy. It's not that just when I'm healthy, that's Krishna's mercy. No, it's also Krishna's mercy when I'm sick on my deathbed. I have an opportunity to concentrate on Him. And we've seen time and time again, those serious devotees, as soon as they get the notice, whether it's 7 days or 3 months, they immediately fix their mind at the lotus feet of the Lord. Like the prayers by King Kula Shekhar. So he knows at the time of death, I may not actually be able to concentrate. But his prayer is that at that point, if I cannot concentrate, then you please remember me. Yes, and so Krishna will remember. Why not? He remembers all of his devotees. But we have to act in such a way that we're there up until that point. It is not we have our relationships with Krishna. From the beginning of our spiritual life, when we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person, and we understand it, yes, I have my relationship with Krishna. And just like I don't want to disappoint any situation, materially speaking, everyone is always careful that I may not disappoint my boss, I may not disappoint my friends, I may not disappoint my family members. So one should always have that. That is the beginning level of Krishna consciousness. Always thinking how to please Krishna, how not to displease Krishna. It's a very simple exercise we don't have. As we continue to advance, it becomes much more developed. It is not simply a process of where I have to artificially. It becomes second nature that my behavior, everything should line up in complete synchronous. How one sits, how one speaks, how one acts. There should not be any difference. It should not be that I act this way with this person or act this way with this person or in this situation. No, because he should be equipoised. Dhīras tatra namuyate. He should be equipoised. I saw the temperature today in Vrindavan. Do you know what the temperature in Vrindavan is today? 111. 111. And that's not the hottest. We remember when it was 120, 121. It's difficult to imagine if you haven't experienced it, how oppressive it becomes. You cannot do anything. It is so hot. You cannot do anything. But you make adjustments. So you do your sadhana in the morning, and you don't go out in the afternoon. They have that saying, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noon sun in India. Only mad dogs and Englishmen. That came from, obviously, from India. So hot. And then you do your service again in the evening. When it becomes cooler, whatever it is you have to do. So you make adjustments. So material life, material circumstances, everything requires some adjustment. But we should not adjust our consciousness. That is our steady, fixed point. Utsaha nishtya daya tat tat karma pravartana. We don't change. Enthusiasm is not enthusiasm if it's affected by material conditions. How is it? Then it's material. It's not spiritual enthusiasm.
Many people are enthusiastic, but you see, under certain circumstances, under certain conditions. Otherwise, they're not motivated. But for us, enthusiasm is part of the fabric of our devotional life. One has to maintain that enthusiasm. Otherwise, it becomes dry, hackneyed, mechanical. And no taste. There's no taste. Whatever he had, and that in the beginning, Krishna gives that taste very easily. Anyone who comes to Krishna's consciousness, he gets very enthusiastic. He sees everything. It's all new and fresh. And Krishna says, yes, let me relieve him from some of this material weight. It is like in the material world, people go to amusement parks. They step out of their daily humdrum routine and they go into a place of fantasy where everything is just supposedly fun and games. Everything is enjoyable. They're trying to appeal to your, what is that? It'll come to me, the aphorism. Prabhupada said, the living entity is eternally pleasure-seeking. What's that verse? What's that? Anandamara Bhyasat. Anandamara Bhyasat. So if he can't get spiritual happiness, he has to go to Disney World or Universal Studios or some other fantasy. He has to put himself in a situation above his normal, mundane circumstances. It's an alternate reality. This just proves how much we are dissatisfied with our existence. Prabhupada also used that term, bhogatyag. We work hard all week and we try to compensate on the weekend by overdoing sense gratification. They go completely crazy for 2 days and then they go back to work on Monday. So this is the nature of the material world. There's no lasting pleasure. But utsaha nitya daya, this Krishna is a reservoir of pleasure. Govinda, the pleasure reservoir of the senses and the cows, and the pleasure of the cows. So we have maintaining the connection. This is the key in spiritual life. Following the orders of the spiritual master is the simplest, most direct method. Tad vijnanatam sagarum eva bigachet. There's so many ways that one can think, let me just continuously read or continuously chant. But it has to be balanced. One has to be acting on behalf of the spiritual master. Otherwise, realization will escape him. It is elusive. It will not produce the desired result. He can read. So many scholars have read Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. They translated it hundreds of years ago into English. But not one person became a devotee. Not one person. The Mahabharata, the Ramayana, all these things have been in English, but nobody became a devotee. It became another cultural mythology, like so many others, like Greek mythology and Roman mythology. And then they had so-called Indian mythology, because they cannot understand it. It's a different level of reality. And that is what chanting the holy name gives us. It is the key to accessing. One's consciousness is purified. Otherwise, how is it possible? How could we have come from the same environment as every other jiva who took birth in this universe? How could we come and to the shelter of the lotus feet of the pure devotees and have a glimpse of the spiritual world. How is it possible? Unless we were able to touch the transcendence. Prabhupada said, Krishna is dancing on your tongue. There is nothing more pure. And for one who is sincere, he gets Krishna's mercy very quickly. But he has to remain connected. In Prabhupada Lilamrita, the next few paragraphs, which we didn't read, are about devotees coming and devotees going. They stay for some time and then they leave. Prabhupada became very emotional sometimes. I witnessed this personally. How Prabhupada, when one disciple who'd gone away, who was very dear, came back, Prabhupada would become very emotional. He would shed tears. He would shed tears. So this is not an ordinary relationship that one cultivates with the spiritual master and Krishna. But his mind becomes confused if he does not remain properly situated. So this is the test. How one remains fixed. So first comes enthusiasm. Then comes firm faith. Patience. Everything has to be there. One has to be patient, just like a woman who becomes pregnant. So she knows for 9 months that I will give birth at some point. But she cannot accelerate the process. She has to be patient. Nature has to take its course. So sometimes devotees become I'm not getting any realization. So they think there's some fault with the process. They don't try to examine. Why do they call this process self-realization? They don't try to examine, how am I performing my sadhana? Am I steady? Am I regulated? Am I controlled? These ingredients have to be there. It's not without these, you cannot expect the same result. It's just like you can't, there are so many things that require step-by-step activity. Take your choice. Whether it's putting clothes in the washing machine, putting the soap in, putting everything else in. There's a process. And it tells you, first put the soap in, then put the clothes in. It works better that way. So why? How do they know? Because they've done it many times. They have experience. So in this process, the great sages were simply following in the footsteps. We don't have to invent anything. Sometimes the tendency is there that, let me try something new. Prabhupada said this was the disease of not just the Americans, but now in other places. But the Americans lead the way. So, unfortunately. But hopefully they learn from their mistakes also. That don't change things. Prabhupada has given us a very simple formula. But it does require attention to those simple details. And why he continuously reminded us, no meat eating, no intoxication, like he was telling them in Laguna Beach, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. These 4 things must be there, plus chanting 16 rounds. So to that extent that one controls his mind, chants the holy name, with firm conviction, with patience, with determination, then he is guaranteed the result. He is guaranteed. The materialists, they work hard for 20, 30, 50 years. And at the end of that term, they used to get a watch, a gold watch. This was the reward. and a thank you, some certificate. So this is very unfortunate that people will work very hard for very little. And that's why they measure their success in how much they can accumulate. Validate their self-worth. Oh no, look at my big house. Look at my Rolls-Royce car. Look at this, look at that. So this is the illusion. But the devotee doesn't think like that. He simply wants to remain in a humble state of mind. And this way he fully expects to inherit, the kingdom of God through the agency of the spiritual master as a faithful, devoted son or daughter. He doesn't ask anything else. It doesn't require. One doesn't have to do something outlandish to try to put himself in the forefront unnecessarily. He should just take whatever Krishna gives him. And sometimes Krishna will give him something very easy. Sometimes he will give him something very difficult. But the result is the same, to please the spiritual master and Krishna. So one is very grateful that, if I have to please the spiritual master, Prabhupada said, if I ask for water, bring water. Don't bring milk. A very simple thing. Even though it seems that, milk is so much nicer. But that's not the desire of the spiritual master. So don't be too over-intelligent. The spiritual master just doesn't ask. He just asks for the tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. Render service. Inquire submissively. So, it is a great science, but at the same time, it is not a difficult science. It is simple for the simple at heart, and difficult for the crooked. And so therefore, Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. This is always the test. Be surprised who stays. Someone, just like in this, devotees are very good at making some analogy. They had, sometimes devotees will come in and they're very enthusiastic and they'll do something, they'll stand out for some time and then they'll disappear. I say, what happened to him? Where did he go? Where did she go? Where did he go? So the devotees used to term them shooting stars. A shooting star is very bright in the sky for a very short period of time. So such devotees come in and they appear very enthusiastic and this and that, but all of a sudden they're gone. So even the materialist says slow and steady wins the race. Everyone knows that analogy, right? The tortoise and the hare. How do they say in Russian? So they have the race. So you have two devotees. You have the enthusiastic devotee and you have the enthusiastic and steady devotee. So you have to be careful. Which one are you? Are you just enthusiastic but without steadiness, or are you enthusiastic and steady? So you will get some benefit. There's no loss or diminution. You will get the benefit. And you will take a birth in a pious situation in the next life. But it's a gamble. It's a gamble. There's no guarantee that you will have human form of life. There's no guarantee. You know that, right? No guarantee. 8,400,000 species of life. Can you imagine if you had the Wheel of Fortune and it had 8,400,000 spokes? They have a TV show like that. You spin the wheel and it goes click, 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 like that. So imagine if it had 8,400,000 clicks. See? And you don't know. That reduces your chances significantly of getting a human form of life. So you don't want, who wants to take that chance? If you were on a game show, you'd say, well, this is useless. What's the point? I have no chance. So once you think seriously, do I want to finish my pursuit of the absolute truth in this lifetime, or do I want to risk taking birth and going through 8,400,000 species of life again? I heard on one lecture, the conversation, Prabhupada was saying something, and devotees, they couldn't believe it. Prabhupada said, when the living entity enters into the material world, his first birth is Lord Brahma. His first birth is Lord Brahma. You can just imagine. The most highly situated living entity. But obviously, that wasn't enough. Because look how many living entities throughout the universe are wandering in these 8,400,000 species of life. It means they didn't have whatever it was required, because that, from the life of Lord Brahma as the creator, he's contaminated by this sense of being the controller. But he has the opportunity. He sees Krishna directly, face to face. He has, and he knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, except when Krishna bewilders him, like Brahma Vimohan Lila. But still he comes and he offers his prayers. Further on in the Bhagavatam. But he becomes bewildered, and then he falls down into the material 8,400,000, when he could just as easily go up. He doesn't have to continue down. He can go right back. Not right back, but right to the spiritual world. So this is, just to give us a little perspective here. We're not Lord Brahma. We're nobody. So, but we have much more than him, because we have met the pure devotee. This is our benefit. Sam saradavanali loka tanaya karunya. The cycle of birth and death has been broken. Now do we want to reconnect it? No. We want to finish it in this lifetime. We do not want to make another foolish attempt. So, we have to thank, the pastimes of the Lord in all their glory and how they appear. And if not for the pure devotee, who would understand this Leela of the king disrespecting the Brahmana, and then the Brahmana cursing the king? Who would understand the purport that this is just to invoke the advent of the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam? No one could understand. So this is how fortunate we are. And we have to pass that fortune on. Therefore, we preach. Some people don't like that. It's become unfashionable in many respects. But whoever one meets, he should speak about Krishna. And if he cannot speak about Krishna, he should be in such a position with Sika, with Kuntimala, with Tilak, that person undoubtedly identifies him with Krishna. So this is key. This is key. So we are always preachers in all respects. We are not hiding. So, any questions? Or Mother Dibyangi?
Thank you so much for the great class. I was just thinking, well, when reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, by reading all different books, we see that almost all devotees of the Lord, they were his eternal associates, I would say, right? And we're not supposed to imitate them, obviously, we just have to follow. But how to don't become discouraged in this process, that like at least myself, like it's just, it's not like I'm here for some, high purpose that Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam was spoken, right? Or something like that. So how to not become discouraged, how to not become disappointed in the process.
When someone presents you with a great gift, there's a certain emotion, gratitude, that we've been given something very valuable. If one recognizes the value, then he protects it. Just like the Bhakti Lata. We have the visual that it's a creeper. And one knows, we've had some creepers which didn't last very long up on the roof, due to one reason or another. So we have to constantly water that creeper by hearing and chanting, and by fostering these close connections with God brothers and God sisters, because you don't know how they will impact your life, your ability to remain fixed. Sometimes all that's required is to have that association. We see that in that Chaitanya Charitamrita, the way you described, that it was all about association. It was all about association. And under what circumstances? Under the most favorable circumstances. Kirtaniya Sadahari. So this was their gift to us. And we see that when we're all doing kirtan together, there's such a sense of connection to Krishna, unity in purpose, and camaraderie, which, if it can be maintained, that is the sustenance, that association, that gratitude. One thinks that, how could I give this up? How could I possibly give this up? What is there that is greater that I could ever hope to achieve anywhere else? It doesn't matter. There's no. But if one is selfish and he thinks that, no, I need to have my independent reputation, then he misunderstands his situation, again contaminated by false ego, that the lower modes, which apparently are displayed here, but they're not. And so therefore, the most important thing, in my experience, is association. That we came because we saw that the devotees were special. They had something. Just like Vaisheshika Prabhu says on book distribution, when you look into that person's eyes, they have to see that you have something that they don't. You have something that they don't. And they should recognize, they may not understand what it is, but they see the devotee's confidence, his joy, because that is Kevala Anandakanda. This is the nature of the devotee. He's not disturbed. He's always joyful, even if it's scooping out the grease trap, which is not a very enjoyable circumstance, materially speaking. But because it's connected to Krishna, he thinks, no, this is... If I have the opportunity to do this, then why not take that, whatever it is? Because I want to show Krishna that I will do whatever he wants. I don't have to be shy. And I don't have to try to trick Krishna that, I'm doing this, therefore you have to do this. It's not like that. But there are so many opportunities like that where no one is looking. And it's not that you do it and say, hey, watch me. I'm going to clean the grease trap. No. These things are done without any desire for recognition. The devotee is this and that. If he's, one time Prabhupada, he was not well, he was in Vrindavan. And someone was chanting, and Prabhupada said, "Who is that Rakshasa? Who is that Rakshasa?" Because you could tell that that person was not chanting for Krishna. He was chanting because he wanted to hear his own voice. He wanted to impress others. He wanted to whatever. But Prabhupada could cut right through it. He could just by hearing that person, he could tell. So we all have experience of this. We don't judge, but at the same time, we have experience. So one has to try to be humble himself. That should be the impetus. When he sees others not acting humble, he should think, "Oh, am I like that? Do others perceive me in that way? Then I have to carefully consider my actions and adjust them accordingly." So that is the key. I remember when I first came to Krishna consciousness, after some time, we were saying earlier, you get some enthusiasm, so you feel like everything is just perfect. It is such a nice thing. The prasadam, the devotees, the deities, everything is just perfect. And then all of a sudden, there's a little kind of like, your mind starts to just become again prominent. For many, many months, the mind kind of gets quiet. Because you recognize for the first time that, oh, the mind and me are different. I'm not this mind. And I remember the first time it became obvious, and I'm thinking, I've been hearing this voice my whole life, telling me this and that, and this is not me. And I could tell why, because it's in opposition. It's telling me to do things I don't want to do now. Why? Because I have a taste of Krishna consciousness. I've come in contact to Da Rajas Tamo Bhavo. Without knowing it, you've come in contact with the higher modes. And so the mind is trying to recover. He's trying to get you. So it starts doing things like finding fault with others. Well, everywhere you look, you see fault. Everywhere you look, you see everyone else is enjoying except me. And then you realize if you're fortunate, you get that moment where it clicks when you say, "Oh, wait a second. How do I see faults in others unless I have these faults myself?" Because you cannot recognize, the karmis, even they say, this is like the pot calling the kettle black. How do they say that in Russian? The pot calling the kettle black. The analogy in America is that you have a pot, right? And a kettle. They both become black by cooking underneath. But the pot is calling the kettle black. Why? They both have the same issue. You have to look it up. The pot calling the kettle black. It's a very famous analogy in the West. It means don't find fault. How can you be finding fault with someone else? You're in the same situation. You have the same faults. We're all contaminated by goodness, passion, and ignorance. No one is free from these things in the material world. So when I realized that, it was a great, I need to work on my own fault. I need to stop finding fault with others. But I was grateful that in one sense, I recognized what the prominent faults were. Because I was seeing them there, I said, well, if I see them there, that means I must have them. So, spiritual life self-realization is a great opportunity. Prabhupada one time said very succinctly, he said, we have enough temples, we have enough devotees. Now boil the milk. You know what that means, right? Okay, when you boil the milk, you evaporate the water. In other words, boiling the milk means let those who are going to leave, leave. And let those who are going to stay become the cream. Become those who will actually execute the mission of the spiritual master. So he said, we have enough temples, we have enough devotees, now boil the milk. Boil the milk. Let those who are going to leave, leave. If they're not able to take the heat, they have to get out of the kitchen. This is his famous analogy. We're not... In Henry Street, where I joined, it was a saying, just like the Marines. They have a recruiting poster, and it says, only a few good men. The Marines don't want everybody. They won't take everybody. You have to have a certain characteristics. So it says only a few good men. So Prabhupada, he repeated that. He said, we only want a few good men. So it was very interesting how that there. So we should be very grateful to count ourselves in that respect, if we're worth it, if we're worthy of it. So, any other questions? Yes, Prabhu.
I just got here, I didn't know everything about last.
We're talking about Parikshit Maharaj, how he put the snake around the shoulder of the Brahmin, and then he became cursed by the Brahmana's son.
But something that caught my attention that you mentioned was about the grease trap in the kitchen. I remember when I started coming here, I was just watching the pots, that thing gets stuck.
Yeah, it gets messy.
So many times I was just scooping the
Yeah.
water,
Yeah.
nasty,
Yeah.
square out. So at that time I was thinking, I was doing a humbly, this is good. I actually was, derived some pleasure out of that.
Right.
And then after that, I see how many wonderful things happen. Not only externally Krishna arranged everything for
Right.
me, but internally so many, realizations, so many things happen. So
Yeah, yes.
I just want to share that, when you
Prabhupada said,
like you say, not to impress anybody, but
yes.
just service.
These are the enemies. The enemies of the devotees are a desire for profit, distinction, and adoration. These are the enemies. Desire for profit, distinction, and adoration. Prabhupada said, don't try to see Krishna, just act in such a way that Krishna will see you. So that is, we should always be thinking like that. Let me act in such a way that Krishna will see me. Not that I just simply go in front of the deity and say, oh my dear Lord, and make some showy prayers. And this, Krishna can see everything. He knows your heart. All we can offer to Krishna is our life and soul. Any other questions? Daniel Kari Peru.
I have two questions. The first one is, so by Maharaj Parikshit case, should we consider any mistakes throughout life? Any mistakes of pure devotee as God's will or Krishna plans, or there is any other?
That's a good question.
And second question is, if you see some mistakes in actions of pure devotee, is it out of wrong vision actually, right? Because they don't do any mistakes.
One has to have the intelligence to understand that perhaps such mistakes are there to test our ability to understand things in the proper perspective. In Bhagavad Gita, in 10th chapter, verses 4 and 5, Prabhupada gives the definition. Well, Krishna gives the definition, but Prabhupada puts it into plain language. He said, intelligence means to understand things in their proper perspective. So, what is the perspective? I saw many, in my time, many such devotees who would criticize Prabhupada after having taken initiation, finding fault with the pure devotee. Why? Because they are less intelligent. Ultimately, it's because they're looking for an excuse not to continue their devotional service. Because one cannot. once you commit an offense like that, it is almost impossible. Not impossible, but almost impossible to recover. Why would Krishna continue to give you any? He's the Chaitya Guru. He's seated in the heart. From him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So one cannot expect. But if one, with his material mind, sees some apparent fault, he sees the spiritual master as some ordinary person, not considering how he has been favored by Krishna for a particular purpose, just to give enlightenment to the fallen conditioned souls, then he will, ultimately, his mind will become contaminated, because he cannot see the big picture, that everyone is acting under the influence of Krishna or Krishna's servants in the form of the modes of nature and their presiding deities. So if one sees like that, then he's not critical or envious. He just says, well, how does it affect me? Does it change my situation as an infinitesimal jiva? Brahmanda Brahmate, Kona Bhagavan Jiv, Guru Krishna Kripai Bhagavad. No. Has the mercy been? No. Obviously I have the mercy. I am in contact. But if he wants to continue in that way and think that, yes, I have, somehow or other, I can't appreciate the qualities of the devotees and to how they have been blessed. Prabhupada gives that analogy that this is specifically an envious person. He cannot see another person making advancement. He cannot see that another person is advanced. So that we have to lose envy through unalloyed, uninterrupted, favorable devotional service. That is the key for all of our material suffering, is just to have this attitude that whatever obstacles there may be presented by my mind, adhyatmic, adhibautic, adhidaivic, I will remain fixed through firm conviction based on philosophical understanding received through the parampara and realized by my actions. So one has to remain engaged, however possible, by hook or crook. By hook or crook, one has to remain engaged. Otherwise, yes, it's difficult. So many times we don't have opportunities. How does the soldier on the battlefield remain engaged? Of course, on a battlefield, it's very easy to remember Krishna, because death is everywhere. So in that sense, you see, Queen Kunti, she prayed again and again to be put into a troubling situation. Why? Because it was easy to remember Krishna. It was easy to remember Krishna. So the pure devotee doesn't mind that I'm in a situation where, I may have some dissatisfaction. I should use that dissatisfaction to firm up my attachment to Krishna. In order to rise above the modes, rise above these inferior qualities, envy, selfishness, greed, lust. So let us read Chaitanya Charitamrita and take Krishna Prasadam. And we can always talk more about these subject matters. Any questions from the audience? Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Chaitanya.